Our next guest is one of the most in-demand music producers and songwriters in the music business, and now he can add another industry to his resume, CBD, with the launch of Mad Tasty. Joining us now is Ryan Tedder, lead singer of One Republic and the founder of Mad Tasty. So, Ryan, you recently launched Mad Tasty. It's a sparkling water made with hemp extract. We've had a lot of athletes on the program who are getting into the CBD space. You're one of the first artists that we've talked to in this space. What encouraged you or made you want to get into it?
Well, some of you guys might have heard of a CBD company called Charlotte's Web. They're the market cap leader in CBD. I went to high school with the Stanley brothers, who started Charlotte's Web, was an early investor before they went public, and have had the benefit of the last few years, both through personal anecdotes of family members and friends who have been using CBD to treat anxiety, to treat inflammation. Between that and kind of the information download that the Stanley brothers have given me in the last few years, it led me to this space that I had at the end of 2018, where all the trails converged into one thing. I was constantly getting dehydrated from not drinking enough water. I love coffee. I drink it way too much every single day, like most Americans. And I had a massive battle with anxiety at the end of 2016 into 2017. For the first time in my life, I started using CBD. I personally experienced that it was not a placebo and that it was leveling me out. And I wanted a way to combine two things that I wanted. I wanted the health benefits of CBD. I wanted to drink way more water. So now I crush about 4 or 5 cans a day. And I also wanted a way to have a social component tied with the company. So if you remember Tom's Shoes, obviously, the 1-for-1 idea. Well, as far as I can tell, we're the only 1-for-1 beverage out right now, especially in the CBD space. So for every 12-ounce can that we sell, we donate 12 ounces of clean drinking water, building wells in India and Africa and things like that. So I just it was basically a way for me to converge all the things that I knew I needed and I wanted at the same time.
And Ryan, just to follow up on, sparkling water as the transmission mechanism, I guess you call it, for CBD.
Yes.
Did you play around with the creams and the oils and all that? Because again, as Jen mentioned, I've got plenty of creams and stuff that we've gotten from people who've been on the show. And to me, the seltzer guy we had on, I think, a year ago, that actually did something, but everything else kind of was a flop for me.
For sure. Yeah, the creams and oils, obviously it's company by company. I've experienced, I don't really mess around too much with the topicals. I did one massage on a vacation a few months ago, and I opted for the CBD upgrade. And without question, I felt that when your entire body is being covered with it, it hits you. I'm not looking for any type of high. I don't smoke weed. Marijuana has never been my thing. I was very skeptical in the CBD space. Had I not had the extremely close connectivity to the Stanley brothers and Charlotte's Web, I don't know that it would have engaged me on the level that it has. But I like making things. I like being creative. And for me, it felt almost as, what would you say, as therapeutic or as fun as producing a record or making an entire album. And it was kind of oddly similar. In terms of health benefits, I'm not a doctor. I'm very aware of Dr. Gottlieb and some of the, I don't want to call it fear-mongering, but some of the statements that the FDA has been making in the space. For me personally, it came down to the anecdotes of all the people around me. I couldn't go to a dinner in a 12-month period without somebody exclaiming the benefits that they've received from it. My manager's wife, my mother-in-law, our neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. The beverages have a lot more efficacy, a lot higher degree of efficacy than the ointments from my experience. We brought in Jeff Chin from the UCLA Cannabis Research Institute to advise us on dosing and dosages. 20 milligrams per can. Like for anybody that doses CBD, if you do the tinctures, the droppers mixed with olive oil or whatever, 100 to 150 milligrams is the daily allowance that's suggested by most CBD companies to experience the benefits of CBD. So I kind of worked backwards from that number. I figured, 100 milligrams, that would be 5 cans. If I drank 5 cans of water, I based all of this on how much water do I want to drink and worked backwards from there.
Hey Ryan, Brian Chung here. So while we have you, I was hoping we can get some of your thoughts on the music industry as well to kind of make a pivot. One Republic, you guys have been making music for over 10 years, but the music streaming game now has really changed the industry. It seems like Spotify, Apple Music, all of those big players have really turned the business model upside down. What are your thoughts on whether or not it's harder, easier for a musician to kind of get into the mainstream with that type of model?
It is for sure easier to get into music now than ever. Money is, from the record label standpoint, money is falling from the sky. Take a company like UMG. Tencent just made a 10% equity play in purchasing 10% of UMG at $3.3 billion, which obviously puts it at a valuation of $33 billion. Go backwards, rewind to 2013, the valuation was closer to 7.5. So you're talking about almost a 5x in the last 6 years. The only thing that's changed in the last 6 to 7 years is streaming. When you look at the fact that everybody in the world pretty much has a cell phone, and bandwidth is getting bigger and bigger. We're not even, I don't even know if we're halfway to the point of critical mass in terms of the world being on streaming platforms. So the value of music is only going to increase, and I think it's going to be exponential. So from a financial perspective, labels are doing great. It's a lot harder if you're a songwriter trying to make money in a streaming world, because streaming doesn't quite pay songwriters enough to make a living, most of us. So radio, which is the original method of consuming music, is, or one of the oldest anyway, is still the predominant way that we get paid. And if you look at it from a bandwidth perspective, if you look at, take for instance, New York City, Times Square. If you multiply the population of Times Square by 10, the street size doesn't get any bigger. So it doesn't, just because the population increased tenfold does not mean that the bandwidth of those streets have gotten any bigger. You just got 10 times the amount of people. So top 40, to make the comparison to music, top 40 is still top 40. It's not top 250. But the amount of music that is flooding the marketplace now would necessitate it being called top 250, because that's how many songs are released. You have 42,000 songs released a day now through all DSPs. And the average record label, take Interscope, for instance, 3 years ago, you had about 120 artists signed to Interscope. 30% of them were in market pushing new albums at any given point. 2019, you have about 220 artists signed, 80% in market on album cycle at any given point. So it's way more competitive. But the good news is, take a guy like Lil Nas X. He posted a video last week. He was like eating pizza in his sister's apartment. That was 1 year ago, the same week that he released what has now become the #1 song of all time on Billboard Hot 100.
Do you think that the math of the equation changes at all with wearables? I mean, you're wearing some right now. We have a note out today about Apple and what's happening with them in terms of wearables. I feel like in some ways I listen to more music now than I did just a few years ago before I had wearables. Is that a theme that you see, that music is going to be able to have a little bit of a renaissance here because of how technology is changing?
100%. I think Jimmy Iovine kicked off the trend first with Beats headphones, him and Dr. Dre. He also signed me, so there's a little, plug there. But wearables, and I've seen the numbers that Apple's reported. Obviously, anybody that bought Apple stock January of last year feels like a investment genius at this point, if you're still holding on to it. And I think it's only going to keep going up. Tim Cook knows what he's doing, and Eddie Q, and they're some of the smartest guys and most forward-thinking guys I've ever known. Tim and I became friends a few years ago, and every time I shoot him an email, I say, thanks for inventing the future, because I feel like that's what these guys are doing. And they really have been massive advocates of the songwriting community and music overall. I think you nailed it. Wearables have made music accessible in ways that did not exist before wearables. And I was a late adopter of AirPods, and now I have like 5 pairs. And anytime you get in an Uber, if you don't like what he's talking about, if you don't want to listen to the conversation, you don't like what he's playing, you pop in your AirPods and you're out. You're listening to whatever podcast, you're listening to whatever format, whatever station or playlist that you want. So I think wearables are you're going to see, if Universal Music is worth $33 billion this year, I think there's a direct correlation actually with wearables and valuations of major music companies.
Ryan, listening to you talk here, obviously plugged into stock market, what's going on in business, taking a shot in the dark here. You got any thoughts on Tesla, Elon, what's going on there? I mean, that stock, it's basically the whole story on this show every day. Stock's at 540, I think now. It's tripled. And I think a lot of analysts say consumers love it. Everyone loves Elon. It's only scolds like us in the business press that have negative things to say about him.
Consumers want Elon to win. I read his book. I got to know Kimball a little bit. I don't personally know Elon, but I know about 5 or 6 people that do. And he is the opposite of the uptight, suit-wearing hedge funder or Fortune 500 founder. He's the modern day Thomas Edison. He honestly is. He's a maverick. He's got a little bit of the rock star vibe going on. So I love watching him. He cracks me up. Like, even his sense of humor and how he names the models of the Teslas that eventually spelled out SEX, which was his plan from day one. The Boring Company. This guy turns around and starts a Fortune 500 company in his sleep. It's ridiculous. As far as the stock, look, I live in LA, so I'm from Tulsa. I was just there recently, in the middle of the country, which is, if you want to get a gauge on America, you need to go to the Midwest. You can't just form your opinions from DC, New York, or LA. And in Oklahoma, you don't see them as often, but that's what people aspire to own now in Tulsa. You got people, my relatives, talking about, you know what, I'm thinking next year I'm getting a Tesla. That's when you know you've made it. When people in Oklahoma are already spending next year's bonus on a Tesla, I think you've got a long track, or he's got a long runway in front of him. That said, every car company on earth is gunning for him. Range Rover is going to drop the all-electric. I'm waiting for the new Range Rover. Every single company is now going to release their electric iteration of their most popular models. But Tesla has a 5 to 7 year head start on them. And I'll tell you this much. I would not want to be one of the people that shorted Tesla earlier in the year. I think what did they say, lost investors? $2.2 billion or something like that?
I saw number $3 billion today in January alone. So, yeah.
And counting. And counting. Bet on Elon. That's what I'm saying.
Ryan Tedder, I'm worried he's going to come after our job.
Well, he could do the show. He could do the show.
He could do the whole thing.
Please let us know when you're in New York, and we'll have you come be a guest host.
You got it.
Mad Tasty, the new water offering from Ryan Tedder of One Republic. Fantastic talking to you.
Hey, ditto. Thanks. You guys have a great day.